right? I'm not doing hate speech. I'm actually here to debate these topics. I know what I'm talking about. If I'm wrong, it should be pretty easy to expose me. But the very fact that they won't take something and even treat it as news, that's the ultimate in fake news.
What would you do about DACA and immigration more broadly?
Yes.
So on the DACA issue, very broadly, I would say this. The problem with the immigration topic is it's completely a political football, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you were to say the following.
Right.
Let's take all the dreamers and offer them a really good deal. They can stay in this country, they can be legal, they can pay taxes, they can earn money, they can follow the laws, but since they have not come here legally and not gone through the legal process, the only thing that they cannot do, which by the way is unimportant to them,
Vote.
is they can't vote. Now, the dreamers would take this deal in 30 seconds,
Right.
but the Democrats would defeat it every time.
Yes.
Because the Democrats have no interest in the dreamers per se. In fact, if empirical research showed that the illegal immigrants voted Republican,
They would
the
know.
Democrats would build a wall faster than Trump.
That's it.
You know it's true.
Can America academia ever be redeemed?
Oh.
So this is an example where the Republican/conservative approach is way too unambitious. Right now, what the conservatives do is they send speakers. Here's Ben Shapiro, here's Dinesh, speaking on campus. And that's good, but it's a little hit and run. We're here on Tuesday, we leave on Wednesday, the professors are here every day. The other conservative approach is to start alternative campuses. There are a handful of those, Hillsdale College, Liberty University, but those are just islands. They don't affect the mainstream of academia.
Yeah.
So the question I want to ask very briefly is, how do you change that? The reason it's extremely hard to do is it's a self-perpetuating oligarchy. First of all, even if you're a young conservative and you wanted to, let's say, this is me. I'd like to get my PhD in literature or history or in political science. I'd like to teach at Tulane or Princeton. But there are powerful lobbies in those places that regardless of my academic distinction will block me. They'll block me. So I have to say to myself, do I want, like Sisyphus, to try to roll the stone up the hill? Or should I go to Washington, D.C., go to the American Enterprise Institute, write my books? That's the reason I went that way, is because the other path, I was basically looking at essentially armies of Spartans, waiting to ambush me at every turn. Now, how do you change this? The answer is really, really simple. There's only one way I can see. Academia, like Hollywood, is a bloated, overweight, tottering edifice.
Yep.
It's tottering because it is absurdly overpriced.
Yep.
And because it does all kinds of things badly, not the least of which is ideological indoctrination. So the way to defeat the system is the same way you defeat the rotary phone, and that is you come up with the iPhone. In other words, you come up with another way of delivering educational services that delivers the same quality for 1/10 of the price. That is the killer app. Somebody has to invent that. That's not a matter of activism. That's that requires a kind of Steve Jobs. And notice that Steve Jobs didn't invent the iPhone in pieces. He invented the whole thing in one shot. And the beauty of the iPhone is that when you look at it, it doesn't even need an instruction manual. You can see right away, that's the future of communications. So that's what will happen with education. When you see the academic iPhone, in 1 second you'll know. There's a beautiful line, Henry Bessemer, who invented this sort of a new way of making steel. The Bessemer method. He's a chemist, and he does his experiments, and he says, I waited, with bated breath to see if they were going to work. And he goes, and then I looked at the result, and he says, and I saw that it worked. Then he adds this line. He goes, and now in my mind's eye, he says, I could see the giant iron industry of the world with all its power crumbling. In other words, it didn't crumble overnight, but the moment his experiment worked, the whole iron industry was doomed, because this is a better way of making steel. That's what we need for education, a better way of doing it, and the moment we have it, all of academia is doomed. Now, the more selective colleges, Harvard University with its multi-billion-dollar endowment, they'll be able to hang on a lot longer. But they're doomed too. They're doomed too. They just won't know it for 20 years. Everybody else will be doomed immediately. But even those guys will be doomed eventually. So that's where we're going. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think, let's take a couple more and then we'll wrap up.
Well, unfortunately, this will be the last question.
Okay.
Where do you see America in 10 years?
So, let me put it this way. To me, we are at one of those moments in American history where the American dream hangs in the balance. Here's what I mean by the American dream. When I came to America, I was 17 years old, I had $500 in my pocket. I kind of looked at this society and I realized that here's a society where the guy who's at the bottom, who is hardworking and smart and creative, is going to rise up the ladder really quickly. But I also noticed something else, because I didn't see myself as hardworking and smart. I said to myself, the really beautiful thing about America is that people who are not very smart and kind of stupid and not very hardworking and not creative also have a good life. I'm like, even that guy has a nice house and 2 cars in his driveway, and if he's in California, sometimes he's got a pool in his backyard. So a country that provides for the stupid, not just for its best. I'm like, this is amazing. This is amazing. So sign me up. Now,
Jeez.
but the whole system depends on the ladder. The ladder. The problem is that we now have in America another system, and in fact, this is what's messing up our whole immigration policy. It's the introduction by the Democrats of the rope. The rope. So here's the ladder. Climb up the ladder. How far you get is going to be based on you. It's luck, it's effort, but it's you. It's your luck. The rope is kind of like this. We, the Democrats, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Pelosi's, we're on top of the building. You immigrants are like down there. We're going to let down a rope. You hang on to the rope, we'll pull you up. No climbing needed. So you can see, if someone had told me this when I was 17, I'd be like, well, this is even more fantastic. I don't even have to work. I basically just have to hold onto the rope. Some other dude is going to pull me up. This is awesome. But it would have taken me a while to realize that, number one, I'm always going to be beholden to the guy holding the rope. If he lets me go, down I go. That's observation number one. Observation number 2 is, having observed this whole rope operation for a while now, I kind of noticed that not a whole lot of people are getting to the top of the building. Somehow the Democratic strategy is to pull you up and hold. In other words, you're suspended in midair. And now, you're screwed. You're too far off the ground to go back down and go for the ladder, and yet no one's pulling you up. You're held in a sort of surreal state of dependent suspension. And yet, you have to vote for the guy holding the rope. He's the one who can let you fall.
Oh
So this is the
God.
plight today, sadly. This is kind of why the Black Caucus can't applaud that black unemployment is going down. Because to
Their
them,
power's gone.
they're the guys on the top of the building.
Yep.
The overseers.
Yep.
And so it's not good for them to have people independent, climbing ladders. Why do you need the Democratic Party? So this is the dirty secret of all this stuff going on. American politics is very tricky because it's all camouflaged with this great fog of so-called idealism. You get the idea that the Clintons, we got into it because from the beginning we cared. Well, you might have cared and you might have come to do good, but you stayed to do really well. You're about the only people in America who've gone from 0 to